Hello and welcome to the channel of Hashalia once again, and I trust that God is blessing you. Today is the 17th of October 2024. Okay, I want to try and give a bit more insight into some of the things that are potentially going to happen in the days, weeks, months, years ahead. So, this is important. It is important and it helps to set out expectations because sometimes I feel, including myself, our expectations are unrealistic in the sense of what we expect from our fellow men, whether that be in government or that be in the church. So I'm going to be looking at two aspects, regime or governmental, and also the church. I want to begin in 2 Samuel chapter 2. And again, this follows on from the fall of Saul and David becoming king. Now, David was initially anointed by the prophet Samuel long before the fall of Saul. But it took many years before it actually came to pass. And even when it came to pass, things did not go smooth, as we shall find out. 2 Samuel chapter 2, and I'm going to begin in verse 4 of the complete Jewish study Bible. Then the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. They informed David that the men of Jabesh Gilead were the ones who had buried Saul. So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead with this message: May you be blessed by Adonai, because you showed this kindness to your lord Saul and buried him. Now may Adonai show kindness and truth to you, and I too will show you favour, because you have done this. Be strong and be brave. Saul, your lord, is dead, but the house of Judah have anointed me king over them. So David is anointed king over Judah. But the initial prophecy regarding David, that he was going to be king over all, but at the moment it just appears to be Judah. Now in verse 8, Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, brought him over to Mahanaim, and made him king over Gilad, the Ashuri, Yitzreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, and all Israel. Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, was 40 years old when he began to rule over Israel, and he ruled for 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David. David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah for 7 years and 6 months. So initially he was meant to be king over all, but that's not quite the way it worked out. David is king over Judah, and Ishbosheth is king over Israel. So you've still got the house of Saul involved in kingship, kingdom. So you've got this division, even though David is rightfully king over all, that was what he was anointed to be. It doesn't begin like that. So Abner was the one in Saul's camp who actually brought Ishbosheth to be anointed as king over all of Israel. So you've got Abner, who is a commander in Saul's army. And then you've got another commander in David's army called Joab. Now, further on in chapter 2, we see Abner and Joab, they come together in a field. Let me read. Verse 12. Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon, while Joab the son of Zeruiah and David's servants also went out, and they met together by the pool at Gibeon. One group sat down on one side of the pool, and the other on the other side. Abner said to Joab, "If it's all right with you, let's have the young men get up and fight it out between themselves while we watch." Joab said, "Yes, let them." So they select the best 12 men from either side, and they have this battle, almost like maybe you could call it a mini civil war. But what happens is the men basically kill each other, and you would think that's that. But that is not that. Because verse 17, the battle that day was very fierce. Abner and the men of Israel were beaten by David's servants. Verse 18, the three sons of Zeruiah were there, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Asahel was as fleet-footed as a gazelle in an open field. Asahel chased Abner. So you've got Asahel on the side of David is chasing Abner, the commander, who is on the side of Saul, or Ishbosheth. Asahel chased Abner, going straight for him, veering neither right nor left. Abner looked behind him and asked, "Is that you, Asahel?" "Yes, it is," he answered. Abner said to him, "Turn off to your right or your left, catch one of the young men and take his armour." But Asahel wouldn't turn aside and kept following him. Abner said again to Asahel, "Turn aside and stop following me. Why should I kill you? If I did, how could I look your brother Joab in the eye?" There's still this respect between Judah and Israel. Abner from Saul's side, Israel, and Asahel from Judah. Abner doesn't want to kill Asahel because he knows he'll have difficulty with Joab if he did such a thing. Verse 23, but he still refused to turn aside, so Abner stabbed him in the groin with the back end of the spear, so that the shaft protruded behind him. He fell down and died on the spot. Everyone who came to the place where Asahel lay dead stopped there. So as much as Abner did not want to confront Asahel, it happened anyway. And unfortunately, Asahel, or Asahel, however you want to pronounce his name, is killed. Then a situation arises where Joab and Abishai, the brothers of Asahel, they start in pursuit of Abner. Joab's very, very angry that his brother has been killed. And so he chases him and chases him until in verse 26, Abner says this. Then Abner called out to Joab, "Must the sword go on devouring forever? Don't you know that in the end it can only produce bitterness? How long will it be then before you tell the people to quit pursuing their brothers?" Abner understood they were still brothers, and he had this respect. And things were getting out of control. It started off with the 12 men on either side fighting each other, but now it's turned into a full-blown battle, a war between Judah and Israel. And Abner wants this to stop. Now, fortunately, Joab listens to Abner and he turns back and basically goes back home. Now, in chapter 3, in the very first verse, it says this: the war between the house of Saul and the house of David dragged on. But David grew stronger while the house of Saul became weaker. So things were not good between the two camps. They carried on, there was bitterness and there was fighting, and things weren't going the way that might have been expected. But then things take another twist, and this is also in chapter 3 of 2nd Samuel. You can read that chapter yourself because I'm just going to sort of summarize things here for sake of trying to minimize the time of this message. Abner falls out with Ishbosheth, and it's basically over accusations about a concubine. Again, you can read this in chapter 3. But the point is this: Abner falls out with Ishbosheth, who is of the house of Saul. And then Abner swears he will help bring everything to pass regarding the prophecy of David. And he sends message to David, more or less saying that. In other words, Abner defects to Judah, to King David, because he's now fallen out with Ishbosheth, the man that he actually anointed as king over Israel. He's fallen out and now he defects to King David. So you think, well, that's a good thing, Abner. And Abner is a good man. We've seen that. He's got common sense, he's got wisdom. But there is one problem in the camp of Judah. Joab is still bitter about Abner killing his brother Asahel. And David doesn't fully understand or appreciate this. So the story goes on that Joab basically assassinates Abner. Bad news. And David understood this. David was very angry that this had happened because this could have made things even worse. It looked bad for David because people may have thought David was involved in the assassination of Abner. And again, just read through 2nd Samuel 2, 3, 4, and so on. And you get a flavour of the picture. But David gives great respect to Abner, and he mourns and grieves over the death of Abner. And the people see this, and that helps calm things down. It helps to keep things cool in Judah. And of course, they've still got the issues with Israel. What I'm trying to show you here is that in one camp, you get people who really got on. They fell out. Abner falls out with Ishbosheth, even though he anointed him king. And he defects to King David to help King David set up fully the kingdom that he would be king over all. Joab started to spread malicious gossip, saying basically, Abner's not here to help you. He's a spy and he's going to turn against you. But David wouldn't have that. But Joab took things into his own hands anyway, because really he was bitter over the death of his brother. And he assassinated Abner. And that could have caused lots of problems. But David had wisdom in how to deal with the situation. Now, the story goes on that David, in his later life, passes on a message to his son Solomon and says, you take care of Joab because of what he did. But that's another story for another time. The point is this, that there is always going to be issues within governments, within kingdoms. Many people think that by Donald Trump becoming president of America, that everything's going to be plain sailing and smooth because you've got a godly leader. David was a godly leader. He followed God with all his heart. We know he had his failings, but he was a man that loved God. But there are people in his camp that are not as quite as zealous as him, and issues arise within David's camp. This has always been the case and always will be the case until the return of Jesus Christ. You see, only Jesus can resolve things. Only God. David knew this. His heart was fixed firmly on God. He understood that just because he was a man that followed God, that the people under him, even good people, were not necessarily as zealous as him. And you've also got the fact that you're dealing with fallen man. There's always going to be problems. Even in a good regime, there are going to be problems. And we see this very, very clearly in the David's kingdom. And even when he went on to become king over all Judah and Israel, a united kingdom, there was still issues. The focus has to be God. The focus has to be Jesus. Only Jesus. Only Jesus. So that's dealing with the political side. But now I very briefly want to turn to Galatians and Galatians chapter 2. Galatians 2 verses 11 to 19. Furthermore, when Peter came to Antioch, this is Paul speaking. Furthermore, when Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him publicly because he was clearly in the wrong. For prior to the arrival of certain people, the community headed by James, he had been eating with the Gentile believers, but when they came, he withdrew and separated himself, because he was afraid of the faction who favoured circumcising Gentile believers. And the other Jewish believers became hypocrites along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that they were not walking a straight path, keeping in line with the truth of the good news, I said to Peter, right in front of everyone, if you who are a Jew live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, why are you forcing the Gentiles to live like Jews? We are Jews by birth, not so-called Gentile sinners. Even so, we have come to realize that a person is not declared righteous by God on the grounds of his legalistic observance of Torah commands, but through the Messiah Jesus, Messiah Yeshua's trusting faithfulness. Therefore, we too have put our trust in Messiah Yeshua and become faithful to him, in order that we might be declared righteous on the ground of the Messiah's trusting faithfulness and not on the ground of our legalistic observance of Torah commands. For on the ground of legalistic observance of Torah commands, no one will be declared righteous. But if in seeking to be declared righteous by God through our union with the Messiah, we ourselves are indeed found to be sinners, then is the Messiah an aider and abettor of sin? Heaven forbid. Indeed, if I build up again the legalistic bondage which I destroyed, I really do make myself a transgressor. For it was through letting the Torah speak for itself that I died to its traditional, legalistic misinterpretation so that I might live in direct relationship with God. Now, I apologise for bringing out lots and lots of well, no, I don't apologise for bringing out scripture, but I'm trying to minimise the message. But this is what Paul publicly speaks to Peter in the hearing of everyone. He is angry with, Paul speaking to Peter. Paul is angry with Peter because he has got fear of the Jews who wanted to circumcise the Gentiles. And it was so bad that even led Barnabas astray. And he calls out Peter publicly, and he goes on to explain why he is calling Peter out publicly, as we've just read. Now, I'm going to finish off in Acts 15 and then wrap it up. Acts 15, 36 to 41. Acts 15, 36 to 41. After some time, Saul said to Barnabas, "Let's go back and visit the brothers in all the towns where we proclaimed the message about the Lord and see how they're doing." Now Barnabas wanted to take with him John, the one called Mark, but Saul thought it would be unwise to take this man with him, since he had gone off and left him in Pamphylia to do the work by themselves. Excuse me. There was such sharp disagreement over this that they separated from each other with Barnabas taking Mark and sailing off to Cyprus. However, Saul chose Silas and left, after the brothers had committed him to the love and kindness of the Lord. He went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the congregations. The church in Acts was a very strong church. It was united. It was powerful. It was loving. But it was still not a perfect church. Again, what did I say at the beginning? Set out expectations, and sometimes we can be unrealistic. We can be unrealistic about what's going to transpire in government, especially in America, but through all the nations in the world. Leaders are changing. God is doing something massive in the world at the moment. But let's understand there's still going to be problems because we're dealing with fallen human beings. In the church, this is a strong, united church. You've got Paul so angry with Peter, he calls him out publicly. And then you've got Paul and Barnabas having a sharp disagreement. In other words, this would have been a heated situation. But the difference is this, and this is something the Lord wants to impress upon you and me. This was a united church, but there's still going to be disagreements and arguments amongst ourselves. And in some cases, there are going to be strong disagreements and arguments within a united church. But the main thing is, Paul, Peter, Barnabas, and I don't think anybody would disagree that these were all major players in the church. These were leaders. They were mature enough to be able to still remain friends, to get over their differences, go off, sometimes their separate ways, and carry out the mission that they had been given. They were still united. They were mature enough to understand these things happen. But the mission of God must never be compromised. We continue with the mission. Only Jesus. Jesus was the priority of Peter, Paul, and Barnabas. He was the highest. There was no one higher. The mission of God had to continue no matter what. We have to get over our differences. So in the building of this end times church, you can still expect disagreements, sharp disagreements, big arguments. But we need to be mature enough to be able to understand these things will still happen, but the mission must never be compromised. Only Jesus. Do not put your faith in the government. Do not put your faith in a political party. Do not put your faith in your husband, your wife, your children. Do not put your faith in the church. Do not put your faith in the pastor. Only Jesus. Only Jesus. Only Jesus. He is the priority. God bless you all. Until next time.